Jaya Sriman Narayana. Jaya Sriman Narayana. Jaya Sriman Narayana. Om Hri Om. Very good. Well, welcome everyone. It's absolutely wonderful being here with all of you again. And as always, before I actually dive too deeply into my talk for today, first, if people please can confirm that you can actually hear me, because we have had technical issues in the past with YouTube, unfortunately. So again, if you can please let me know that you can hear me, then we will proceed. And I'll just wait a very short time until someone confirms that you can actually hear my voice. Very good. All right, wonderful. Excellent. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. I see that people can indeed hear. That is very good. So, again, thank you. Thank you for being here. And as usual, we will be doing our live stream, and I will be giving a little bit of a talk, and then I'll leave some time for questions and answers. Like last time, I'll try to leave a good amount of time for questions and answers, so that I can try to answer as many questions as I can. As always, I won't be able to get to all of your questions, and I apologize in advance for that. And I would ask very simply that you please wait on asking your questions until I indicate that it is time to indeed begin asking questions. Otherwise, if you begin to ask now or as I'm giving my talk, I will not see your questions. And I do want to see them and give you an opportunity to have an answer. So with that, I'm going to give a little bit of a talk today. And as we have been doing quite a bit, this will be a talk very specifically from the Srimad Bhagavatam. The reason why I give talks from the Srimad Bhagavatam so often is several reasons. First of all, it is indeed a Vedic scripture par excellence. For those individuals who have read a little bit of the Vedic literature, or at least who have heard that term, you know that there are many, many, many different scriptures that are there in what we call the Vedic literature. And we're talking about hundreds and hundreds of sacred texts. You know, this is one of the strengths of Sanatana Dharma, is the fact that we are lacking nothing. We are not lacking knowledge. We are not lacking authoritative sources of truth and information. But of all these texts, you know, when you come across this vast library, it can be very daunting. The idea that, oh, there are so many hundreds and hundreds of sacred books that are there in front of you. So what is nice is that, of course, it's not really necessary to read all of these books. Rather, what is wonderful is that there are several books that are especially meant to be read, especially by individuals today in this specific age of the Kali Yuga. And among those are certainly Bhagavad Gita, the principal Upanishads, several of the sutras. So, for example, Yoga Sutras, Narada Bhakti Sutras, certainly the Brahma Sutras, though those are very, very difficult for the average person to understand. But another one of these very important scriptures is indeed the Srimad Bhagavatam, what is sometimes called Bhagavata Purana. And it's one of the Puranas. It's the most important of them all. And there are several translations in English. And I've had several people ask me, what is a good translation? And I can tell you, the translation par excellence, the best translation on earth, is the one that is done by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. That is definitely the best, and I have them all. I have all the various translations of the Srimad Bhagavatam in English, and as I translate things from the Bhagavatam, I'll use these as references, etc. I've read them all, but of all the various translations, definitely the one by Prabhupada is the best. So if you're going to get one, I would definitely recommend that. But this is the most important Vedic scripture, or at least the most important Purana, for this reason. All the Puranas focus either directly or indirectly on God. Some of them indirectly, quite indirectly actually, but some a little bit more directly. Of all the Puranas, the ones that focus almost exclusively on God and reveal truly what is the nature of God in an unobtruse kind of way. These two works are Vishnu Purana and Bhagavata Purana, known as Srimad Bhagavatam. So with the Srimad Bhagavatam, very specifically, again, God is spoken of, described very intimately in such a way that if you truly want to know in a very direct way what is the nature of God, without games, without speculation, the Srimad Bhagavatam is the book that will reveal this to you in a very straightforward and very, very in-depth sort of way. So that is why I will very often quote the Srimad Bhagavatam, give lectures on the verses of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So again, today we'll be looking at another one of these truly amazing verses. And let me tell you what this verse is. It's Canto 11, Chapter 15, Verse 16. So you can feel free to look this up yourself. With this verse, this is not an original translation by me. I do have a lot of verses that I've translated from the Sanskrit. This is, let's say, a verse that I fixed up a little bit. This was not translated by Prabhupada. It was actually translated by one of his disciples. But looking at the Sanskrit, I realized that it could have been done better, and I made it better with this translation. So this will look a little bit different compared to the, let's say, BBT version of the 11th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, but it's because I fixed it up a little bit. All right, so with that being said, I'm going to read this verse and then comment on it. And the verse proceeds. The yogi who places his mind in me, the Supreme Lord Narayana, who is said to be the fourth state, possessor of all opulences, and known only by the Vedic scriptures, partakes of my nature and obtains the power of unbounded dominion. Powerful, powerful verse. Truly a wonderful verse. And I think you've seen a pattern with the verses that I've been speaking about recently. And what that pattern is with everything that we're going through in the world today, with this coronavirus crisis that now finally, thankfully, is starting to wrap up and be finished sooner than many people predicted. With everything that's going on today, plus just the general, let's say, angst that is produced by the conditions of the Kali Yuga, people need to hear messages of empowerment. And I think you've seen, if you've been here for the previous live streams, that those are the verses that we've been focusing on, verses that empower us. And why is this the case? Why is this something that is of importance? Well, we know that so many individuals, again, given the myriad pressures that we have upon us from society, from the culture, a truly degenerate, anti-God, anti-spiritual culture that has come about in modernity, especially in the last 50 years or so, with the internet now being a source of, yes, information, but confusion also. And with so many different factors, again, the whole coronavirus thing, which now thankfully is going away very rapidly, with so many pressures upon us, it's easy to feel helpless. It's easy to feel very often as if we have no power in this world. And power not meaning the power to dominate. I'm not talking about power in, let's say, a power politics kind of way, or no. I'm talking about simply as individuals. We need to feel that we have some control over our lives. We need to feel that with myself wishing to express my free will in this world, I have some freedom. I have some ability within me such that I can fulfill my dreams. I can actually achieve something truly wonderful in this world. And what is terrible is the fact that so many people today feel powerless, truly. They feel as if they have no control over their lives. And the thing that is sad, of course, is that those individuals who unfortunately have control over us, those individuals are doing this on purpose. The individuals who basically control society also wish to have control over us as well. But how do they do this? The way they have control over us is by making us feel that we have no control over our lives. Thus, so many people feel powerless in their lives. So, that being the case, this is why this verse is of such great importance. So, that being said, let me just go through this verse that explains to us precisely how we can reclaim this personal empowerment that we need over our lives. So, first of all, the yogi. I believe it was the last time that I commented on those two words because it started off in a very similar way, the yogi. Well, I think we know what is meant now by the yogi. What is meant by the yogi very specifically is any individual who very sincerely and through the Vedic method is practicing spirituality on a day-to-day basis in such a way as to make spiritual progress to know oneself and to know God. That is the yogi. So again, it's interesting. If you're someone who, let's say, you don't necessarily do asanas or you don't do asanas very often, don't think that you're not a yogi necessarily. Again, a person who simply does asanas may be a yogi, maybe not. But what truly is a yogi is an individual who practices spirituality on a daily basis to know God. That is what is the yogi. Now, the yogi who places his mind in me. Now, this is Krishna speaking, and very specifically, Krishna is an avatar. Krishna is one of the incarnations of Narayana, of Vishnu. And it's interesting how in this verse he makes this very clear, especially if you look at the Sanskrit, which if you look at the video description, you'll see the Sanskrit actually there, and you can feel free to look at that. Krishna is the avatar, and he's speaking of himself as the incarnation of God. So he says, the yogi who places his mind in me. And what is meant by this? How do we place our mind in God? Well, of course, we do this via meditation. This is how we do this. It's through the process of meditation that we absorb our mind directly in God. In fact, this really is the sole goal of meditation. You know, I've talked about this before, how, when it comes to meditation, like so many spiritual topics, there is an abundance of confusion and worthless opinion and different ideas about what meditation is. Much of it made up, some of it based on a little sprinkling of truth that a person may have found here or there. If you watch 50 videos, let's say on YouTube, on meditation, you'll get 50 different opinions, etc. Well, it's very unfortunate that that is the case, because the truth of the matter is, traditionally in authentic spirituality, and now talking about Vedic spirituality very, very specifically, there is no mystery about what is meditation and how meditation works. Again, I've said this in the past, and those people who now are beginning to explore Sanatana Dharma very deeply, you've seen this is the case, that truthfully, no speculation is necessary. All the answers are there in the scriptures. What is the nature of God? What is the path that we are to follow? How does the path work? What is the answer to this philosophical question, that philosophical question? What is true meditation? All these questions, and literally thousands of others, are answered in a very authoritative way in the Vedic scriptures, and it's not a matter of speculation. What it means to engage in ultimate meditation is indeed to place our minds within God. That is, to meditate upon God very directly. And this is the meditation that all the authentic acharyas of the past taught, Ramanuja, Madhva, Nimbarka, so many different people, hundreds and hundreds of them. This is the sort of meditation that is primarily taught in the Vedic scriptures, so many of the Vedic scriptures, etc. It is meditating very specifically upon God. Not meditating on a crystal, not meditating on a flower, not meditating on X, Y, Z, not meditating on, like a lot of New Agey people say, anything you choose. No, meditating upon God. And why is this the case? Because God is the highest. Because God is the source of that crystal and of that flower and of everything else, X, Y, Z, stretching into infinity. So thus we meditate upon God. So now this is what Krishna is saying here. The yogi who places his mind in me, so this is God speaking, but then he qualifies, you see. Again, for those individuals who think that meditating upon God is really no better than meditating upon a rock, very sadly for them, Krishna now qualifies his statement. He says, the yogi who places his mind in me, and then, who am I? Who is this me? Who is this God who we are to meditate upon? The Supreme Lord Narayana, who is said to be the fourth state. Now, for many individuals, this last clause will be a little bit confusing. And the reason why is because it is indeed a very technical and a very mystical statement, this fourth state, turiya. Turiya is the Sanskrit. And this term is used in several different manners in the yogic texts, in the Upanishads, in other yogic texts. What is meant by the fourth state, of course, depends on the context, but really it means the same thing in all of these various contexts. It means that indeed which is purely transcendent, that which has nothing to do with the material world, with the body, with the emotions, with the mind, with the intellect, with the ego. That which is beyond all things, that is what is called turiya, or the fourth state. So, what Krishna is saying here is that, speaking of himself, that I, as God, I am the Supreme Lord Narayana, thus confirming that Krishna is an avatar of Narayana, who is said to be the fourth state. In other words, he is himself transcendence and the source of all transcendence. Thus, when we use this term, the transcendent, and very often you'll hear this, I even use this term sometimes when trying to be objectively philosophical, you will refer to God as the transcendent. Well, what is meant by that? It means that which is indeed transcendent, that which transcends everything that is materially conceivable and perceivable. It means that which is the source of all things. What God is saying here is, I am that. I am that. I am that fourth state, the transcendent. And then he goes on. Bhagavat, the possessor of all opulences. The possessor of all opulences, the possessor of an infinite number of auspicious attributes. This, too, is what God is. He is the possessor of all things good to an infinite degree. See, this is a definition of God. In fact, all of these we'll see are definitions of God. But this is a very powerful definition of God. That what is God? He is the possessor of an infinite number of auspicious attributes that are great to an infinite degree. That is, one could say, the definition of God. Why is this the case? Because none of the rest of us can say that. Very simply. Thus, we are not God. And anyone, doesn't matter if they claim to be spiritual, doesn't matter. Anyone who says, I am God, very arrogantly or with pretend humility, that individual is claiming that they are indeed the possessor of an infinite number of auspicious attributes to an infinite degree. And yet, of course, if you look at that individual making that claim, they are the incarnation of imperfection in so many ways, if you scratch beneath the surface. So thus, only God can say this. So this is a, indeed, definition of God. Now let's go on. and known only by the Vedic scriptures. An epistemological statement, a very important statement, that this is indeed something else that God wishes in this verse to say about himself. He is telling us that this is what I am. I am the transcendent. I am the source and the possessor of an infinite number of auspicious attributes to an infinite degree. And how do you know me? Well, he says, known only by the Vedic scriptures. Thus, this is indeed one of the ways in which we know God, especially when it comes to knowledge content, when it comes to anything specifically of philosophical content, what sometimes people would call theological content, etc. In other words, if we wish to have our honest and sincere philosophical inquiries into the nature of the absolute satisfied, fully and totally, how do we do this? We turn to the Vedic scriptures. Thus, this is why a true spiritual teacher, a true guru, a true acharya, any individual who claims that they have the ability to deliver transcendent truth unto you, this is why they speak from the authority of the Vedic scriptures. See, it's a very sad thing. You know that I'm very, very blunt and honest about this because this is my tradition, Sanatana Dharma, the Vedic tradition. I've been following this tradition for 46 years now, and it gives me quite literally pain within whenever I see individuals, whether now that there's an internet, whether they appear on the internet or whether before the internet, I would just encounter these people through their books or sometimes face to face. And they claim that they are gurus, yet they can give 100 talks, and if they quote directly and accurately from the Bhagavad Gita once, you're lucky. Thus, their teachings are indeed not based upon the Vedic scriptures, that is, fraudulent gurus, individuals who claim to be gurus but who are frauds. How do you know a true guru? Well, many ways, not just one way, but this is certainly one of the ways, is that they are employing the Vedic scriptures as their source of authority. If they claim that, oh yes, all the knowledge I'm giving you, it's coming directly from me, from my realizations, because I had this mystical experience a few years ago, blah, 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 and it's all coming from me, that person is a fraud. That person is a fraud. And if you know such individuals, you should indeed stay away from them. If you are following such individuals, I implore you, very, very, very sincerely and in a heartfelt way, I implore you to get away from that person. The way that we know God is via the Vedic scriptures and, of course, a guru who has the ability to impart those Vedic scriptures unto us and to explain those Vedic scriptures. And again, how do we know this? God is telling us. God is telling us how we may know him. So this is why, don't doubt this. Don't speculate. Don't waste all of your time spiritually trying to follow some other route. God here is telling you. How do you know him? Through the Vedic scriptures. This is why we study the Vedic scriptures, including Srimad Bhagavatam. Now, that yogi who does all these things, and now we finish with the last clause, that yogi partakes of my nature and obtains the power of unbounded dominion. Powerful, beautiful how this ends here. First of all, that yogi who does all these things that were said here, who understands all this, who places his mind in me, who meditates upon God, that yogi partakes of my nature. What does this mean? Well, this is the process of what I have termed upasana in the past, upasana. And what is meant by upasana is this very important Vedic principle that is found in the Upanishads. You'll see how the two words Upanishad, upasana, even sound very similar. That's because they share the same verb root. And what upasana means very specifically is essentially proximity. That is, if you wish to become like unto something, you make sure you have proximity to it. So what are the examples that are given? There are quite a few examples that are given, actually. So, for example, if a person is cold, well, what do? If you're cold, you find a fire and you have proximity to it. You sit near that fire, and thus you gain warmth. And of course, you can see there are many examples that can be given like this. You need a bath very badly. Well, you find water, and you have proximity with that water, etc. Well, in the same way, the way that we ourselves spiritually become transformed is that we have proximity with God, upasana, which also is known as bhakti, as devotion. Upasana is synonymous with two things, with meditation and devotion, and truthfully, ideally, in the supreme sense of upasana, both. So, devotional meditation upon God. When we have devotional meditation upon God, in the same way that if we're cold and we sit next to the fire, we gain warmth, in the same way when we have proximity to God, we are blessed by God. We are blessed by God and all of the, let's say, auspicious qualities that God has. So, that being said, now let's go to the very last section of this clause. That yogi obtains the power of unbounded dominion. Now, for our purposes and the purposes of this talk very specifically, this part is extremely important, and this is the point of this talk, that person obtains the power of unbounded dominion. Now, what precisely is meant by this? Vaśitā is the Sanskrit word that is used, vaśitā. This is an actual yogic attainment, what is known as one of the siddhas, that an individual can attain, such that when indeed you have proximity to God in meditation and devotion, and you yourself begin to become transformed spiritually, you begin to have control over your life. You begin to have control over everything that's happening around you. And again, when we say control, we don't mean in some abusive way, some control freak. That's not what we're talking about. On the contrary, what we're talking about is, especially for those individuals who have not had a lot of control over their own lives, seemingly, over what happens to them. Now, suddenly, you indeed begin to gain that control over your life. And why is this the case? Several reasons, actually, and very practically so. First of all, of course, in order to pursue this path to begin with, that is, to do meditation, to do yoga, to be on the path of sadhana, such that each day you do your spiritual practice every day without fail, etc. Well, what does this mean? It means that in doing these practices themselves, you begin to acquire all of the necessary characteristics and, let's say, talents that you need to be successful in life and indeed to have control. You begin to develop self-discipline. You begin to develop a sort of regularity where you have the ability to do things on a regular basis, day by day by day. You begin to have tremendous focus as you continue to practice meditation every day. Let me tell you, I've spoken about this in the past, and if you look at any great person in history, and it doesn't matter what field, it can be a great general, it can be a great politician, there aren't many of them. But let's say if you do indeed find a great political leader, let's say, if you're looking at a great spiritual leader, spiritual teacher, an artist, a business person, etc., any person who achieved something great, what is one of the things that they all had in common? Focus. The ability to focus on whatever their goal is and whatever they need to focus on right then and there. So thus, again, we see how in doing this process of indeed meditating upon God, we develop all of these abilities. But more, what we also gain is the very grace of God himself, such that, again, we have the ability to not be victims anymore. We have the ability to not allow others outside of ourselves who are possibly evil people or malevolent individuals, etc., to have control over us. And even worst case scenario, if we find ourselves in such a situation where it's almost impossible to truly have absolute control over our own lives, at the very least, we approach our present situation wherever we find ourselves with detachment and peace. So thus, this is why, again, this verse ends in this very powerful way, that the yogi who, again, does this meditation upon God obtains the power of unbounded dominion. You have the ability, indeed, to finally have control over your life and to choose what you wish to do with your own life, with your body, with your health, with your mind, with your intellect, and with your soul. This is the sort of empowerment that, again, so many people are missing today and so many people very desperately need. So, a very, very inspiring verse. And again, what I would ask people to do, as always, is to actually practice what is said here. In fact, let me just talk about this for a minute before we go on to questions and answers, because this is something that I truly need to stress. It's one thing to certainly look at these verses very philosophically, and of course, they're fascinating. Philosophically, they're wonderful, they're inspirational, etc. So it's one thing to certainly listen to this talk, for example, that I just gave, and hopefully you were inspired by. But more than this, it's not enough. It's necessary to hear these verses from the Vedic scriptures, but it's not sufficient in order to make spiritual progress. The way that we actually make spiritual progress is, when this live stream is over, you have the verse there with you. It's in the description. Read it again, and read it again, and think about it, and incorporate what you have read into your life in such a way that you haven't just read it, you haven't just heard about it from me, but you practice exactly what is being said here. And if you do this, indeed, you will not have to feel powerless anymore. You will know that the most, putting it lightly, most powerful being in existence is there with you as you meditate upon him. And you have nothing but unbounded dominion. So with that, thank you very much for listening to my talk. And we left a little bit of time, approximately half an hour. So with that, I would like to answer some questions. So now is the time. If you have any questions, if you've been holding off until now, then now is certainly the time. So please ask away anything philosophical or practical about the Vedic tradition. Very good. Some very good questions are coming up. If anything, too fast now. But that's good, actually. It's better to have too many questions than not enough. So let me just go through these. First of all, Harvey says, greetings. I recently finished Sanatana Dharma, the Eternal Natural Way. Thank you very much. For those who know, that is my main book. It's a book that I recommend to anyone who wishes to know more about this tradition. It's available at dharmacentral.com. So he just finished reading this and have been meditating daily. Wonderful, wonderful. Congratulations. That is a wonderful thing to do. I'm studying the Gita slowly and ask simply which books you recommend I should move on to reading. Oh, you asked a good question, and there are so many suggestions that I can give you. First of all, as far as, let's say, contemporary books, but books that are very authentic in how they present Sanatana Dharma. In addition to Sanatana Dharma, the Eternal Natural Way, I would ask that you read two other books that I've written very specifically. And that is, first of all, Living Dharma. That's the simple name of it, Living Dharma. It's a book of very inspirational aphorisms that people seem to love. I've gotten a lot of feedback. People love that book. Also, the Dharma Manifesto is another book that I've written that goes very deeply into Vedic philosophy, but talking about more contemporary issues, political, social, economic, etc., cultural. So if you find those things interesting and want to understand them from a Vedic perspective, that's certainly another book. Also, generally speaking, another author, actually, that I would recommend, and I would recommend that you read anything by him, is the person that I mentioned earlier, Prabhupada. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. I would recommend that you read pretty much anything that he has written, because everything that he has written is indeed truly, truly authentic. Indeed, so much so that I can very easily say, for those of us, for those individuals who today truly aspire to follow Vedic spirituality in a radically authentic, radically traditionalist sort of way, almost all of us were inspired by Prabhupada specifically and very directly. So I would recommend anything by him. Now, scripturally speaking, there are a few other things I would recommend. You say that you're slowly going through the Gita. Certainly continue with that. Scripturally speaking, I mentioned Srimad Bhagavatam. This is a very big book. It's about the size of the Bible. So that will keep you busy for some time. But also several of the Upanishads. Isha Upanishad, sometimes it's called Ishavasya Upanishad, is one. Shvetashvatara Upanishad is another. Kata Upanishad is another. And maybe I'll stop there. I can probably mention another 50, but I've probably thrown it more than enough Sanskrit at people who may not be too conversant with Sanskrit. So I hope that was enough reading material for you. Very good. Very good. Here's another one from Sri Ram. Hare Krishna, Acharya Ji, what does it mean when the Vedas say that there are 400,000 species of human beings? Does this include the gods and the demons? Very good. It does not. It does not. It means human beings. It means individuals who, let's say, originated from Manu and who are descendants of Manu and are thus called Manushya. The gods and the demons are separate beings. They are their own species. They do not fall under Manushya. They do not fall under human. So I hope that answered that. And yes, indeed, there are hundreds of thousands of species of human beings. I don't want to go very deeply into this, but let me just say, those individuals who think that there's only the quote unquote human race and we are all one and we're all the same. The Vedic scriptures disagree. There are hundreds of thousands of varieties of humans, many of which are pretty much akin to what we know of as humans, more advanced humans on this planet. Many of which are practically subhuman, that is, they are individuals who are not very advanced, many of whom actually are much more advanced than the human beings who are currently situated on our planet today. More than this, people have also asked me, well, where are all these hundreds of thousands of humans? Well, this is not the only planet with humans. There are many, 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 many planets, actually. There is an entire sphere of planets that have humans to varying degrees, and this is where many of these various species exist. Some of who are so advanced that they almost seem like gods, but technically they're humans. So I hope that answers that question. Very good. Let's see. Namaste, Acharya Ji. Can you comment on the science and significance of yantra? Yes, a little bit. I don't want to go too deeply, only because it is indeed something that, well, two reasons. Number one, it is rather esoteric. Number two, it's one of these things that, again, today in modernity, a lot of spiritual and pseudo-spiritual people like to talk about but not actually do anything with. So to know about yantra and to practice meditation upon yantra are two different things. But let me just say what yantra is, to explain this in the tiniest nutshell. A yantra is a two-dimensional sacred image that contains the representational essence of the god or goddess upon it, and which we are meant to meditate upon in order to enter meditationally into the yantra and thus commune with the essence of that divinity. That is what a yantra is. So it's a form of meditation in which, again, we use a two-dimensional image that is square, that is usually made out of a metallic substance, and that has a specific symbol upon it, and it represents the specific murti. So there are the specific deity or Ishta Devata who we choose to meditate upon. So that's what a yantra is. Very good. Good. Bhaktajan asks a question here. How do Atmans have and obtain spiritual names? Do they have many relatively important names or one primary name? If so, how do Atmans such as Sri Narada Muni achieve their name? Very good. Well, this is a very good question. I believe I actually answered this with some depth in a previous video. I don't remember which one, but I did answer this for at least quite a few minutes and very philosophically and accurately. But I'll certainly answer this. First of all, as far as how does an Atman have and obtain a spiritual name? Well, there are two senses in which we can understand this. First of all, there is the true name. There is the actual name of the Atman itself. See, every individual Atman in its spiritual essence contains with it various, let's say, things that represent it. One of these is a name, which represents the very essence of that Atman. Thus, as Atmans, we do indeed all have a spiritual name that is eternally with us. So that's a name that each Atman has in that sense. But then also, certainly, for Atmans who are within the material world, there are also ways of acquiring secondary spiritual names, and that probably answers the rest of this question, that there is indeed primary and then secondary and tertiary names. The primary name, of course, is that name which is eternally reflective of the Atman itself that has always been there. The second name is the name that is given by the Guru. This also is a name that is purely spiritual in content, but at the same time, it is indeed a secondary name because it is not necessarily a name that was with us for all of eternity, but that represents our, let's say, sadhana relationship with the Guru. That's an aspect of, let's say, the secondary names that many people are not aware of. So when the Guru gives you a name, what that name represents is who you are now as a new person, let's say, spiritually, who is now under the tutelage of the Guru performing sadhana. That's why we're given a spiritual name by the Guru. So such and such Das, such and such Devi Dasi, etc. Krishna Das or Rama Das, etc. This is why we're given that name. So let's see. Hopefully that answers that question. Yes, as far as Narada Muni, yes, Narada is a secondary name for him. Many people don't know that. Very good. Very good. This next question I think I just answered, actually. That is the question from Vasil. What is the meaning and purpose of changing your name, etc.? I think I just answered that. I'm going to skip a few questions here, and please forgive me for doing so. It's only because I don't want to cause controversy with my answers. That would be too great. This is a good question, actually, a very practical question. Does one give himself to God fully or incrementally? Well, truthfully, both, of course, but at the same time, this is indeed a good question. And I think I understand what you mean. Does an individual, when they surrender unto God, is it the case that all at once you have full surrender, truthfully full surrender unto God, or is it something that is a process? Well, it is indeed a process. We surrender unto God truthfully, incrementally, but at the same time, our desire and our let's say, intention should be full surrender unto God. See, this is the nature of prapatti, sharanagati. There are so many different words for this idea of surrender unto God. The idea is this, that when we surrender to God, of course, at that very moment of surrender, we should be doing so in absolute sincerity, humility, and we should be surrendering indeed fully in our mind and in our heart. At the same time, of course, we have to understand that this is not like becoming a born-again Christian. It's not that you simply make some kind of statement, oh, I surrender God unto you, and oh, that's it, now I'm a fully liberated being. I have really nothing else to do now other than, maybe be an ethical person until I die. No, that's not a concept that exists within Sanatana Dharma. Rather, the idea is that there is indeed an initial moment of surrender where, yes, we must turn to God. And again, with tears in our eyes, with such sincerity that we have tears in our eyes and our bodies are practically shaking, we should surrender our lives at the feet of God and say, God, I am yours. I am wholly and completely yours to do with as you wish. I am your servant for all of eternity, and from now on, everything that I think, everything that I say, everything that I do is dedicated completely unto you. That's prapatti. That is surrender. So certainly we have to do that with that attitude. But at the same time, we can say this verbally, and we can indeed mean it so sincerely that, yes, our body is practically trembling. But at the same time, we still are who we are. We still have our faults, our problems, our internal, let's say, negative traits that we need to overcome. Thus, the process of surrender is something which, while on the one hand, yes, we do an act of surrender like that, we understand that, truthfully, we will be deepening our sense of surrender to God more and more throughout our lives. So yes, it is both full. It should be full. We truly mean it when we say that I surrender unto you. But we also understand that that surrender increases more and more as time goes on. So I hope that answered that question. Very good. Can you please can you explain how dhyana is defined in the Bhagavad Gita? Man mana bhava mad bhakto ma jaji mam namaskuru ma devashyasi satyam te patijane priyosi me. That is how meditation is defined in Bhagavad Gita. That is, who is the definer? Who is the definer? The definer is God. The definer is not me, is not you, is not some personality on YouTube, some author of a book. That individual who defines all things of importance is God. And what does God say in this verse? This is from Bhagavad Gita, by the way, if I forgot to say that verse that I just recited, chapter 18, verse 65, where Krishna explains what is the process of meditation, where he says to focus all of your awareness upon me, meditate upon me, think about me, etc., etc. So in other words, when, as this verse was also saying, we place our minds upon God, then in that way, that is meditation. The Bhagavad Gita also explains this, as I just explained in this verse from Bhagavad Gita, but then many, many, many other verses from Bhagavad Gita say the same thing in different ways, that the process of dhyana or meditation is that we meditate upon one thing and one thing only, and that is the highest. Not the 10,000th highest. Not that which is 10,000 spaces away from the highest. Not a rock, not a flower, not a beautiful babbling brook. It's nice to meditate near a beautiful babbling brook, but you don't want to meditate on the babbling brook, otherwise you'll end up babbling. So, with that, I have one of my disciples here almost falling over laughing, so I'm glad that was funny. But yes, you want to meditate on God and on God alone, not babbling brooks. All right, so with that, let's go on to some more questions that are here. Very nice. Very nice. I'm going to answer this one actually, because this is a very personal question, but I think one that many people will be able to relate to. So, namaste. Please, my ex-girlfriend is a very good person, but unfortunately, some turbulent times have made her lose her faith. I want to help her get her faith again. Is there some piece of advice that I can share? Well, certainly, yes. Again, these are turbulent times. Again, as I began saying at the very beginning of this. That's why I chose to talk about this verse, and how so many people, with all the pressures and challenges that are coming upon us from so many different directions, so many people indeed feel depressed, and they feel powerless, and they feel like they have no control over their lives, and on and on. So many people are indeed just traumatized by so many things that are happening, many of which are the result, unfortunately, of the asuras, the demonic individuals who have been controlling many of our societies, many of our nations for many, 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 many years. But what this sometimes will do is, indeed, even a person who is a good person, who is a spiritual person, will sometimes struggle with faith and begin to ask, why is all this happening to me, etc. And such individuals can indeed be helped, or at least we can make the attempt to help them. Number one, we have to realize that ultimately, of course, every living being is a being who has free will. And that is how God designed it, because God is the ever-free, the ultimate free being. And that being the case, we, being sparks who have emanated from God, we also have freedom. That being the case, of course, you should certainly try your best in a humble and very gentle way to help her to regain her faith, but ultimately understanding that she's a person who indeed has free will. This is why I say we believe in teaching, not preaching. When we have someone even close to us and we want to try to help them spiritually, we can't proverbially beat them over the head with spiritual knowledge. No, very gently, what we are to do is to help them by, first of all, understanding why they find themselves in the position that they are. Why has this person, why has this person lost faith? Why is it that this person finds herself in this way? And to try to address that very specific situation. Hurling philosophy at a person who is devastated by life doesn't always help. Sometimes you need to just put your arm around them and just cry with them and just be there for them and help them. So that's the first thing to understand. The other thing is certainly what I tell many people, including especially parents, but again, anyone who wants to help people who are close to them. Make sure always that you are a perfect example of spirituality in action. Spirituality, dharma in motion. Make sure that you yourself serve as an example, such that when it comes to the point that she begins to arise out of, let's say, this despair that she might find herself in, she has you there as a model, as an individual who she knows is a highly spiritual person and who she can now begin to take inspiration from. And the other thing, finally, is certainly, again, in very gentle ways. Not preaching to her, not insisting, but in very gentle ways. Have discussion with her, but lovingly so. This is someone you love. Talk to them about God. Talk to them about spirituality. Find out why the person has lost their faith. Try, indeed, philosophically in gentle ways to try to answer their questions. But again, without pushing it, without making them feel uncomfortable. And if you do this combination of different things that I've mentioned, then hopefully it will indeed get to the point where in time she will regain her faith. But again, the important thing is to do all things very gently with her and lovingly, because this is someone that you love. So with that, we have a little bit more time. I'll see if I can get to one or two more questions. Oh, this is an interesting one. Sri Acharyaji, in daily life, will simply repeating I love you while focusing on Sriman Narayana help to deepen one's devotion? Well, let me first answer this in this way, but then I'll answer it more seriously. It certainly won't hurt. It certainly won't hurt. And that's the humorous answer, but truthfully it's true. It certainly won't hurt. It's always good to speak to God. It's always good to speak to God, and to speak to God intimately. It's interesting. You say here specifically to repeat I love you to God. Well, we do this with others. We do this with people we love, whether it's a parent or a child or our partner in life. We say this, I love you. Well, why not do this with God as well? So certainly it is a good thing to do as much as possible, to quite literally speak to God, including especially in prayer, and to say God, I love you. And to say it with as much feeling as we would say to, again, someone in this world who we love. But now the somewhat deeper answer as far as actual sadhana, as far as actual spiritual practice. While, again, doing a practice like that is certainly something that, again, it can't hurt. It would certainly be a very good thing to do that. As far as sadhana, what we wish to do are those forms of meditation that are especially revealed in, again, where? The Vedic scriptures. So again, you see how everything ties together along with this verse and everything that we say and do. In accordance with the Vedic scriptures, there are indeed prescribed forms of meditation that we are meant to do, such that we can truly commune with God in a very direct and very authentic way. And for those individuals who have watched my videos for some time and know my teachings, you know that what that means very specifically is mantra meditation. It is in mantra meditation, with mantra meditation especially, that we commune with God most directly. And why is this the case? In mantra meditation, when we are using an, again, authentic revealed mantra that is found in the Vedic scriptures, what we are doing is we are meditating upon the very name of God, such that God's power, God's presence is there with us as we are meditating, and not just present, but purifying us, helping us to remember who He is. So thus, this is the best sort of meditation that we can have in order to express devotion toward God. And of course, in the Vedic scriptures, there are many authentic mantras that are revealed, quite a few actually, all of which have the names of God in them. But the one that I meditate upon especially, and I do use other mantras as well, but my primary mantra and the one that I teach to my disciples is Om Namo Nārāyaṇaya, Om Namo Nārāyaṇaya. This is the primary mantra that we use. And the reason why is, again, it is indeed revealed in several of the Vedic scriptures, including the Narayana Upanishad, the Srimad Bhagavatam. Some people may not know that. The Om Namo Nārāyaṇaya mantra is in the Srimad Bhagavatam. You can look it up. You can do a search for it. So this is a mantra that is Vedically revealed. It is a Vedic mantra that all Vaishnavas and yogis recognize. It is a mantra that has been taught by the great acharyas and passed down since the very beginning of time, etc. So I would certainly recommend that you please try this sort of meditation. If you have not seen these in the past, go to our previous videos. I believe we may even have a playlist on our channel where we have meditation videos where you can see me actually teaching how to use this mantra and how to do proper meditation. So please try that when you have a chance. And as I look at the time, I see that unfortunately we're 2 minutes away from the top of the hour. And I try to keep these live streams to about an hour. So as always, I need to please apologize. I can't answer all of your questions, and I do apologize for that. There are usually so many questions that it's somewhat overwhelming, the sheer number of them. But again, we are doing this approximately once a week. Please feel free to try again next week, and maybe I'll see your question and be able to answer it. Before I leave, I just want to repeat a few things that are truly important. First of all, again, let me thank you for being here. Let me sincerely thank you for taking these teachings seriously. I know that many people do. Of course, like with anything, I'm sure there are people who just kind of wander in, wander out. They may or may not find this interesting or beneficial. But for those of you who truly do, for those of you who truly have a deeply spiritual and philosophical bent to you, who sincerely want to know what is the meaning of life, who am I, what is the meaning of God, is there a God, how do we know God, etc. For those of you who truly want to know the answers to all of these questions, who have humility, who have an open mind, and want to truly inquire, thank you for being here. And I ask you, as always, to please take this path seriously. Please, yes, read these Vedic scriptures. Please get our books, which are meant for the modern age, Sanatana Dharma, the Eternal Natural Way, Living Dharma. If you just go to our website, you'll see these books. Please practice as much as possible. Practice the meditations that we teach and that we talk about so often on so many different venues. And in this way, truly practice this. In addition to saying that, I want to say the usual. Please, if you are here for the first time, or if you have not yet done so, please subscribe. You know, this is an important channel. We don't do this to make money or for fame in any way. We don't do this for any other lower sort of motivation like this. I've been a spiritual teacher for a very long time, and I'm only a spiritual teacher because my guru commanded me to be so. Otherwise, I probably today would just be a simple monk somewhere who no one would ever have even heard of if I had my way. But please subscribe. We want to grow this channel. We want these teachings to be accessed by as many people as possible. Please help us to spread our videos. Please go to dharmacentral.com when you have a chance, and we have an email list that is there. You'll see it as soon as you go to the front page. Please sign up. And it is just an email list where you'll get more information and announcements about the ISDS. That's all that will happen if you join that. But then again, I also want to say one last thing, and that is this. For those of you who indeed are very sincere and find yourself to be truly inspired by what you hear in all of these videos, in the books if you've read them, by my teachings, if you truly are inspired and you want to help, you can. Please become a member of the International Sanatana Dharma Society, which is our movement. It's a nonprofit movement. It's a 501c3. You know, this is not a business. This is not a business. Trust me, we do not do this to make money for ourselves. Every penny goes directly to everything that we do, all the many expenditures of having a global movement, which are many. Please help us by becoming a monthly tithing member. If you go to dharmacentral.com, look on the menu, and you'll see a drop-down menu that will have a link to membership. Please take a look at that and consider becoming a member today if you can. In doing this, you help us, again, with all the activities that we're doing, but more, it also helps you to feel more aligned with myself. If you see me as a guide, it helps you to align yourself with me, with our movement, with everything that we're doing, with our community. Because truthfully, this is what it's all about. This is why we do what we are doing, is to allow people to have the sense of being part of a community, a real community. You know, yeah, don't get me going. I can talk about this for a long time. This is something else that people are missing today. We are all atomized, monadic little units kind of floating out there, and so many of us feel so alone, like we're not part of something. Well, feel like you're part of something. Feel like you are a part of this movement, this International Sanatana Dharma Society, by becoming a member, and that way knowing that you are a part of this community. So again, please go to dharmacentral.com. Consider becoming a member and helping us and helping yourself in this way. And if you do so, I personally will thank you very much and be very, very grateful. So with that, we're going to end here. Again, thank you so much for being here. All of you who are out there listening to my voice right now, please take very good care of yourselves in every way. If you can, get out of your house with all these lockdowns taking place. If you can, get out into nature, get out into the sunshine, breathe some fresh air. Please take care of your health in every way. Get to the gym, do yoga, eat right. Please do your sadhana every day, do your meditation. Bathe your mind in the purifying grace of these Vedic scriptures daily if you can. And in this way, make your life joyful and truly happy and truly successful. God willing, I will see you again sometime next week for our next live stream. And in the meantime, namaste. Jaya Sriman Narayana. Jaya Bhagavan Shri Krishna. Jai Guru Deva. Sanatana Dharma Jayate. Victory to Sanatana Dharma. Om Shanti. May all sentient beings know peace. And with that, please take care.